Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." How many times have you found yourself utterly annoyed by someone? Maybe it's the coworker who talks too loudly, the friend who always shows up late, or the stranger who cuts you off in traffic. It's almost universal. Certain people and behaviors irritate us to the point where we can feel a tightness in our chest, a flare of frustration, or even anger. Yet, as Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, tells us, this irritation isn't just about the other person. It's a signal pointing back to us, revealing deeper truths about our own unresolved issues and insecurities. It's an uncomfortable idea to digest, isn't it? We're used to thinking that our irritation is caused by the outside world, by the flaws and faults of others. But if we look through Jung's lens, we see a different picture. He believed that what annoys us in others often reflects aspects of ourselves that we have pushed into the unconscious, aspects we have disowned or rejected. In essence, our irritation is a mirror, showing us the parts of ourselves we'd rather not see. Hermann Hesse, another thinker deeply influenced by Jung, once said, "If you hate a person, you hate something in him that is part yourself. What isn't part of ourselves doesn't disturb us." It's a bold statement, but it carries a profound truth. When something or someone gets under our skin, it's often because it touches on a vulnerability or an insecurity within us. This is the essence of what Jung called projection. Projection is a defense mechanism, an unconscious process where we displace our unwanted feelings, thoughts, or traits onto others. We might project our own insecurities, fears, and unresolved emotions onto those around us, turning them into screens onto which we cast our inner conflicts. For instance, if you're annoyed by someone who constantly seeks attention, it might be because you, too, crave validation but are uncomfortable admitting it. Or if a friend's lateness drives you crazy, it might point to your own struggles with control and patience. Projections change the world into the replica of one's own unknown face. In other words, our projections create a distorted view of reality, making us believe that the flaws we see in others are external problems rather than internal reflections. The world becomes a mirror of our hidden self, showing us the parts we've tried to bury. We end up trapped in an illusion, reacting to our own shadow rather than the true essence of the person in front of us. Think about it. How often do you get irritated by someone who is arrogant or boastful? It's easy to label them as obnoxious or self-centered, but why does it bother you so much? If you dig a little deeper, you might find that it triggers a sense of inadequacy within you, a fear that you are not enough, and a resentment towards those who appear more confident or successful. In this way, the person who irritates you becomes a catalyst for introspection. Instead of just reacting with annoyance, Jung invites us to ask, what is this irritation telling me about myself? Jung's concept of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow represents the unconscious parts of our personality that we suppress, often because they don't fit the image we want to project to the world. These hidden aspects include not only our darker traits, like jealousy, greed, and anger, but also qualities we might actually admire but don't allow ourselves to embody, like assertiveness or ambition. When we encounter these traits in others, they stir something inside us, often manifesting as irritation. The challenge is that our shadow doesn't go away just because we ignore it. It remains a part of us, lurking beneath the surface, influencing our behavior in subtle and often destructive ways. We might lash out at others, judge them harshly, or become overly critical, not realizing that we are projecting our own internal conflicts outward. It is often tragic to see how blatantly a man bungles his own life and the lives of others, yet remains totally incapable of seeing how much the whole tragedy originates in himself. We become trapped in a cycle of blame and frustration, failing to recognize that the source of our discomfort lies within. We see the world as flawed and irritating, all the while remaining oblivious to the fact that we are projecting our own flaws onto it. But there's a silver lining. Recognizing our projections can be incredibly transformative. It's an opportunity for growth, a chance to reclaim the parts of ourselves we have disowned. When we catch ourselves reacting with irritation, we can pause and ask, what part of me does this reflect? This kind of introspection isn't easy. It requires honesty and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But it's also the key to greater self-awareness and a more integrated personality. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're at work and a colleague constantly takes credit for ideas you contributed. You feel a surge of irritation and maybe even anger. It's easy to direct that frustration outward, labeling the colleague as selfish or manipulative. But if you take a moment to reflect, you might realize that your irritation stems from your own need for recognition, a need that perhaps wasn't met in childhood or that you feel uncomfortable acknowledging as an adult. This doesn't mean your colleague's behavior is acceptable, but it does mean that your strong emotional reaction is revealing something deeper about your own psyche. Jung's wisdom isn't about excusing bad behavior or letting others walk all over you. It's about using your emotional reactions as a tool for self-discovery. Setting boundaries and standing up for yourself are important, but so is the internal work of examining why certain behaviors trigger such strong responses in you. The goal isn't to suppress your irritation, but to understand it and, through understanding, to heal and grow. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, Jung famously said. By bringing our projections into the light, we take back control over our reactions. We stop blaming others for our discomfort and start taking responsibility for our own inner work. This shift can be liberating. The people who once irritated us become our teachers, showing us the parts of ourselves we have yet to integrate. This process is not easy. It requires vulnerability and a willingness to confront the darker aspects of your psyche. But it's worth it. The more you explore your projections, the less power they have over you. You begin to see others more clearly, free from the distortions of your own unconscious mind. Your relationships improve, and you find a deeper sense of inner peace. Consider the case of someone who gets annoyed by others who are lazy or unmotivated. They might label them as weak or irresponsible, feeling a strong sense of irritation whenever they encounter such behavior. But if they look within, they might discover that this irritation stems from their own fear of being perceived as lazy or a deep-seated belief that their worth is tied to their productivity. By acknowledging this, they can begin to address the root cause of their irritation rather than just reacting on the surface. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people, said Jung. When you understand your own insecurities, fears, and unresolved emotions, you become more compassionate, both towards yourself and towards others. You realize that everyone carries a shadow, and that most of us are simply doing our best to navigate a complex inner world. So, the next time you feel a wave of irritation rising up inside you, pause for a moment. Instead of immediately reacting or judging the other person, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this irritation showing me about myself? It might be pointing you towards a part of your shadow you have yet to acknowledge. It might be highlighting an insecurity or fear you have tried to ignore. This kind of introspection isn't always comfortable. It might bring up painful memories or aspects of yourself you'd rather forget, but it's also a path to healing and wholeness. By facing your shadow and integrating it into your conscious awareness, you become a more complete version of yourself. You start to see the world and the people in it with greater clarity and empathy. Ultimately, Jung's teachings offer us a powerful tool for personal growth. Irritation and frustration are not just unpleasant feelings to be avoided or suppressed. They are signals, guiding us towards deeper self-awareness. By embracing this discomfort and exploring its source, we can transform our irritation into a source of insight and growth. In a world filled with distractions and constant external noise, this kind of inner work can feel like a radical act. It requires turning our gaze inward, confronting our own darkness, and taking responsibility for our emotional responses. But the rewards are immense. We find greater peace, improved relationships, and a deeper understanding of ourselves. So, the next time someone gets on your nerves, remember Jung's words. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Instead of reacting with frustration or anger, take it as an opportunity for introspection. The person who irritates you might just be a mirror, reflecting back a part of yourself you've been trying to avoid. And in that reflection, you might find the key to a more integrated, compassionate, and fulfilling life.